Evening, one and all. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide here on the Vida television network. Hope you had a good weekend. I spent my weekend thinking a lot about what happened last week. I couldn't get my mind off how far this country has descended into the gutter, courtesy of the Democrat Party and liberal extremists in this country. We'll get more into that in a minute. But first, here's how you get in touch with the show in case this kind of stuff is bothering you as well. ChrisSalcedo.com, always a resource for you. You can drop me an email. You can drop me a voicemail, and we'll try to address those here on future shows. On social media, at Chris Salcedo TX, at ChrisSalcedotx as in Texas, or on Facebook, The Chris Salcedo Show. This is what kept me up all weekend. General Kelly, in case you guys missed Friday's show, we showed about 4 minutes of this guy pouring out his heart and soul to the country, telling us of the advice he gave to the President of the United States when the President said, hey, you know, not only am I a new politician, but I've never delivered the bad news to a family before that their loved one is not coming home. How do you do it, General? So the General here gave President Trump some advice. Listen to this.
He said, Kel, he was doing exactly what he wanted to do when he was killed. He knew what he was getting into by joining that 1%. He knew what the possibilities were because we're at war. And when he died, in the 4 cases we're talking about, Niger, my son's case in Afghanistan, when he died, he was surrounded by the best men on this earth, his friends. That's what the president tried to say to 4 families the other day.
You know, before he goes on, you know that over the weekend, one of the other Gold Star families who received the same phone call from the president said that his phone call was heartfelt. So the only difference between that call and the call that's getting the notoriety around the basket of biased press into the country is that on that particular call, where the Gold Star family said it was heartfelt, there wasn't a left-wing extremist anti-American nutbag by the name of Congresswoman Frederica Wilson riding in the car. That's the difference. The General continued.
I was stunned when I came to work yesterday morning and brokenhearted at what I saw a member of Congress doing. A member of Congress who listened in on a phone call from the President of the United States to a young wife.
Yeah, nobody's talking about the propriety of a sitting member of Congress listening in on a private phone call between the President of the United States and a Gold Star family. What kind of sick human being do you have to think that to be to think that's okay? Well, that's your sick human being right there. Her name is Frederica Wilson. Let me tell you, folks, this woman's crazy. This woman, you know, not a few burritos short of a combination plate. Let's put it that way. How she gets elected, I don't even know. And she's so devoid of conscience that she would think it's wholly appropriate to listen in on a private conversation between the President of the United States and a Gold Star family that he was trying to convey his heartfelt sorrow to, so she could politicize it. Follow me here. Now in the United States of America, courtesy of that woman's party, courtesy of people like her, we now have politicized a phone call from the President of the United States to Gold Star families trying to comfort them. It's sick. Here's what she said upon hearing the full 18-minute speech, which you just heard an excerpt from, of Chief of Staff General Kelly. Here's what Frederica Wilson said.
Let me tell you what my mother told me when I was little. She said, the dog can bark at the moon all night long, but it doesn't become an issue until the moon barks back.
Anybody want to drop me an email and tell me what the heck she's talking about? I have no idea. Some have speculated she's casting herself as the dog nipping at the heels of greater people on this earth like Donald Trump and the general. And that it only becomes an issue when the moon, meaning the general or the president, barks back. She apparently likes her Republicans to lay down and take all the abuse, like President George W. Bush did, allowing the political left-wingers like her to define them. Well, we're going to talk about President Bush here in a minute. Frederica Wilson had something else to say about all the attention she was getting because every left-wing biased press outlet wanted to talk to her and hear her impression of this phone call. Now, remember, 4 phone calls were made. Only one was politicized. At least another one was characterized as heartfelt, but only one had a left-wing extremist anti-American kook riding in the car. Her, Congresswoman Wilson. Listen to what else she said.
You mean to tell me that I have become so important that the White House is following me and my words? This is amazing. That's amazing. That is absolutely phenomenal. I have to tell my kids that I'm a rock star now.
Yeah, makes you a rock star in Democrat circles, politicizing the death of fallen soldiers. Yeah, that's what constitutes a rock star among the American left. This woman is a disgrace. I would say she's a disgrace to the Democrat Party, but the entire party, they're just like her. They're just like her. The same amount of care and love and admiration for our fallen. That's the Democrat Party. She's also a disgrace to this country. And all of you out there who are minorities, like your liberty-loving Latino here, she gives all minorities a bad name. I spoke of President Bush earlier. President Bush, I have a great deal of admiration for and have taken a lot of heat in conservative circles for recognizing he's a good man. And he is a good man. I just think he's playing for the wrong team, to be honest with you, in this particular case, the elitists. And I'll get more into that when we hear what he has to say. He took to giving a speech the same day all of this stuff was going on with the Gold Star families to decry a problem that he saw in the country now that Donald Trump is president.
For more than 70 years, the presidents of both parties believed that American security and prosperity were directly tied to the success of freedom in the world. They knew that the success depended in large part on U.S. leadership.
No. For the last 70 years, not every president has, Mr. Bush. President Obama didn't believe in that at all. As a matter of fact, he abdicated our responsibilities as the world's lone superpower. To which it begs the question, Mr. Bush, why weren't you giving this speech 4 years ago or 5 years ago when the country needed to hear it? Mr. Bush continued.
Freedom is not merely a political menu option or a foreign policy fad. It should be the defining commitment of our country and the hope of the world. That appeal is proved not just by the content of people's hopes, but a noteworthy hypocrisy. No democracy pretends to be a tyranny. Most tyrannies pretend they are democracies. Democracy remains the definition of political legitimacy. That has not changed, and that will not change.
In other words, the Salcedo show axiom that says only a legitimate government is a government that looks as its goal as protecting the rights and liberties and freedoms, the God-given rights, liberties, and freedoms to its people. That's a legitimate government. That's what he's saying. That only a legitimate government is one that is democratic, that is representative, and protects the rights and liberties of its people. Again, where was he over the last 8 years when we had somebody sitting in the Oval Office who was eroding those rights, who was acting and found to have violated the Constitution, violated the rule of law himself, his own law, Obamacare? Where was this speech then? Why does he wait until now, until 10 months into President Trump's administration? I think it's a fair question to ask.
There's an aggressive challenge by Russia and China to the norms and rules of global order. They propose revisions that always seem to involve less respect for the rights of free nations and less freedom for the individual. These matters would be difficult under any circumstances. They are further complicated by a trend in Western countries away from global engagement and democratic confidence. Parts of Europe have developed an identity crisis. We have seen insolvency, economic stagnation, youth unemployment, anger about immigration, resurgent ethno-nationalism, and deep questions about the meaning and durability of the European Union.
Why? Because of men just like Barack Obama. Because of men just like John Boehner. Because of men like Mitch McConnell. Because of women like Nancy Pelosi. Because of women like Frederica Wilson. Elitists. In this speech, Mr. Bush goes on to talk about the ruling class. Sorry, the governing class. The governing class, he will say. I'll have more to say about it here in a minute, but that governing class has been responsible for the sad state of affairs that Europe is in and for the sad state of affairs America is in. And the reason why Donald Trump was elected. Their failures, they're putting themselves ahead of their constituents and the people they're allegedly there to represent. That's why Donald Trump was elected. A political outsider, outside of this governing class that Mr. Bush will speak of.
America is not immune from these trends. In recent decades, public confidence in our institutions has declined. Why?
There was poll after poll after poll during the Obama occupation of the Oval Office stating that very simple fact, that Americans no longer had confidence in their institutions. Why? Because Barack Obama had undermined that confidence. He put politicians and political hacks in charge of our institutions. And they started doing things like persecuting those who had a different political view than the president. Do the letters IRS mean anything to anyone? That's the reason why these institutions had no faith, because the people had no faith in these institutions because they had been infected by left-wing Democrats. How about the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who let Hillary Clinton go after she clearly violated the law, after James Comey, the former FBI director, looked the other way when there was a bribery case between the Russians paying off the Clinton Foundation and the Obama administration to get the Uranium One deal, when James Comey looked the other way. And even he said there was a violation of the law, but the reason why Hillary Clinton got off was because, she didn't intend to violate the law. Inventing a brand new American standard for Democrats. As long as you don't intend to break the law, it's okay.
Our governing class has often been paralyzed in the face of obvious and pressing needs.
That term, governing class, should be patently offensive to everyone within the sound of my voice. In America, there is no such thing as a governing class. Do you know why? Because, Mr. Bush should have gone back and maybe listened to a speech or two from Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan observed that we have walls on our country not to keep people in, but to keep others who are not welcome out. That this is a government of, by, and for the people. The governing class is me, you. We are the governing class. Here the people rule, or at least they're supposed to. This term Mr. Bush used was patently offensive.
The American dream of upward mobility seems out of reach for some who feel left behind in a changing economy. Discontent deepened and sharpened partisan conflicts. Bigotry seems emboldened. Our politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. There are some signs that the intensity of support for democracy itself has waned, especially among the young, who never experienced the galvanizing moral clarity of the Cold War, or never focused on the ruin of entire nations by socialist central planning.
You mean like the ones in Venezuela? Like the tyranny in Cuba, Mr. Bush? Whose fault is that, President Bush? Democrats, liberals, their ideology in charge down there, and their ideology in charge of our government-run schools. That's why it's not taught, Mr. Bush. That's why all of a sudden we have people thinking, hey, it's A-okay to silence free speech so long as it disagrees with my left-wing perspective. Whose fault is that? The left wing who puts those idiotic ideas into practice, and a Republican Party who didn't oppose them. Like you, Mr. Bush. You let them run roughshod all over you.
We become the heirs of Thomas Jefferson by accepting the ideal of human dignity found in the Declaration of Independence. We become the heirs of James Madison by understanding the genius and values of the U.S. Constitution. We become the heirs of Martin Luther King, Jr. by recognizing one another not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. This means that people of every race, religion, ethnicity can be fully and equally American. It means that bigotry or white supremacy in any form is blasphemy against the American creed.
He's right. I would have just preferred he said bigotry in all of its forms, not just white supremacy. Anybody who thinks their race is supreme is against American values. We'll continue this conversation next. Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide. Be right back. Welcome back, everybody. It's Chris Salcedo Show. I'll get to our guest here in a second. I want to remind you how you can get in touch with the program. ChrisSalcedo.com. You can find out all kinds of information. There's email links and all that kind of stuff there. Or you can go to @ChrisSalcedoTX on Twitter, @ChrisSalcedotX, as in Texas, the freest state in the union. All right, joining me on the phone right now is mom of 7, a Christian, pro-gun conservative. Her name is Susan Swift. This current cultural political climate, she believes, is making our children afraid of the police, afraid of guns. And she has set out to change that. She's written a book, Good Guys with Guns at Home. Susan, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Thanks so much for having me on, and it's a pleasure to talk to somebody in my home state of Texas.
See, that's kind of weird because I started out in California, and I got here to Texas as soon as I could. You started out in Texas, and now you're living in California.
That's right. I guess they had to import the native Texans to California to kind of take care of that state. They need all the help they can get out
No
in
kidding.
California. So
No kidding.
I'm the tip of the spear, I guess.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we're going to be talking about what's going on with you and what you've experienced, and the whole it's all California centric. So let's start off at the very beginning. There's a reason why you wrote your book, and start the story off.
All right. So it all started in my child's preschool. There is around Christmas time, parents can come in, and there'll be a pageant or just a way that the parents can play with and experience a day at the preschool with their child around the Christmas season. And so that was happening, and a dad who also is a police officer came to the event. He got there a little bit late. He was just coming off duty, so he parked his squad car, and he left the K-9 unit in there, and he came down to join the group, and he got there a little late, and he was in his uniform with his sidearm. And so he politely stood at the back, not wanting to interrupt anything that had already begun. And a liberal mom noticed him and started freaking out and was very concerned that there was a police officer in the school. The preschool teacher, the other moms, everyone reassured her that, no, don't worry, nothing wrong is happening. He's a dad. He's one of the dads of one of the kids here, so everything's okay. You'd think that would make a difference, right?
Well, you'd think. But hold on, Susan, before you go on, because there's more to the story, folks, but before you go on, I think it's important for us to reflect of how we got here. The reason why cops are looked askance, the reason why you've got NFL players out there pretending that police officers are roaming the country, hunting people of color, is courtesy, in my mind anyway, of the last administration that tarred and feathered, I believe, unfairly those in law enforcement. Do you agree?
Exactly. You're right on the money. This is created environment by the Soros-funded left, the Black Lives Matter, Antifa, all of these groups who are agitating for chaos, which is exactly what communist socialists do. They want to tear down societies, and the best way to do it is create chaos, and that is they attack the law, they attack law enforcement because those are the people who keep the peace. So in any event, that's the mindset of a lot of people in California, is that police are bad or they're going to hurt someone, when actually police officers are there to protect and to serve. And 99.9% of them are really honorable, wonderful people who will lay down their lives to save you. And in fact, if you're a preschool mom, the very first thing that you're going to want when anything goes down in LA, you would do anything to make sure that the police were right there at the preschool.
No, that's true. That's so true. And you know what? This whole idea that somehow our police officers are predators out there on the streets was fostered into the last administration and kept going because the Democrat Party and the liberals in our society need an issue they think they can win on. And that's because of the election of Donald Trump. They're trying to drive home that narrative. We're talking with Susan Swift, everybody. She's written a book called Good Guys with Guns at Home. And where we left off was a parent freaked out at the sight of a police officer showing up to pick up his kid with a sidearm and in full uniform. And Susan, pick up the story from there, because what did the mom do after that?
Well, everyone reassured her that everything was fine. It didn't matter to her. Her point was he shouldn't be here. A police officer in uniform should not be there at the school because he had a gun. It didn't matter that he was a parent and he was off duty. That didn't matter. He shouldn't be there because he had a gun. She made such a fuss eventually that the police officer and his wife decided, we just can't leave our child at this school, because it became very uncomfortable. She contacted the captain and insisted that the liberal mom contacted the captain and said, look, I don't want him coming around the school to pick up his child because he has a gun.
Okay. Wait, I got to stop you there. Yeah. Now, what I would hope would happen, that if some hysterical liberal idiot says, I don't want police officers with their big bad guns in my school, and I'm going to take my kid out, I would hope that administrators, adults, would actually say, well, ma'am, sorry you feel that way. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you. Is that what happened?
Not really. The preschool teacher was very upset, but the administration was more along the lines of the Rodney King. Can't we all just get along? And this made the preschool teacher so upset. She wanted to quit her job, and I said, oh no, we're going to have some fun with this. Why don't we redo the whole preschool decor, and we'll put in drawings of guns. We'll have little girls coloring guns pink, and we'll have anything having to do with the military and with all kinds of American flags, and we'll turn it into wonderful. And oh, by the way, in the library here, where the children get to pick out little books that they want to read during the different reading time, let's fill the library with pro-gun, pro-police, pro-military children's books.
Well, I know, but again, I want to get back to the reaction. Now, what did the school district say to the father? Did they back the hysterical liberal mom, or did they back our blue?
The preschool is a private preschool. They were very nervous, and they really did the, can't we all just get along? Can't we all just do this? And it was uncomfortable for the police officer, because the preschool administration, they kept of the two children that you would ask to leave, should have been the liberal mom family. They should have, look, you're uncomfortable with another parent. He's doing his job. He's duly authorized officer of the law. He's got his sidearm, under the law, and you've got a problem with it. He's done nothing. I guess you're at the wrong preschool, but that's not how it happened.
And that's disgraceful. First off, let me remind the folks who we're talking to. Susan Swift. She is a mom of 7. She's a Christian, pro-gun, and as you could hear, she didn't want to take this whole thing lying down. So that's what prompted you, Susan, to write your book, Good Guys with Guns at Home, so that this school could have a pro-gun, pro-police officer book in it to reinforce these values, that these individuals who put on the uniform, whether it be our nation's uniform or the police uniform, they're there to do good. They're there to protect and serve, the vast majority of them. And we shouldn't be teaching our children to be afraid of those who stand between us and harm's way.
Absolutely right. When I looked to see, okay, let's get a few books for the new library, if you will, to teach these kids, there was nothing. There's no pro-gun, pro-kid, pro-police book out there. Mm-hmm. I said, oh, well, we got to have that happen. And that's how the book got started. And I found a wonderful illustrator who's in Hollywood, and he's got 50 years of illustration. He's made the most whimsical, sweetest drawings. And my idea was, let's show young children the friendly, happy faces of the good guys with guns. That's, the good guys with guns at home are domestic law enforcement. That's sheriff and the National Guard and SWAT members, people like that who are every day protecting us where we live. And so through the book, you can see pictures of, a sheriff smiling and saying, I am a sheriff, and this is my gun, this is my shotgun. And it introduces children to the various types of domestic law enforcement, from a police officer and so forth, and the different types of guns they can have, whether it's a service revolver or whether it's a shotgun. We even have a taser in there, and we have a canine unit in the book, so that children won't be afraid. They'll be looking at heroes. They'll be looking at everyday American heroes who use guns to protect us where we live. That's
and you know what? And a side effect of this, too, is that we could teach the next generation to respect firearms instead of fear them, which is what our liberal progressive opposition, they're trying to get folks to fear guns so that we ban them so that they can keep control of society without any opposition. Her name is Susan Swift. Her name is Susan Swift, everybody, and the name of the book is Good Guys with Guns at Home. Susan, thanks for carving out time here on the Salcedo Show.
Thanks so much, Chris.
All right, kids, that's going to do it for the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide for this evening. Look, you want to get in touch with the show anytime, go to chrissalcedo.com, ChrisSalcedo.com. You can drop me an email, you can drop me a voicemail, and we'll try to address any concerns or any issues you want addressed coming up on future programs. Or you can get instantaneous access to the program by going on Twitter at Chris Salcedo TX, ChrisSalcedotx, as in Texas, or just find the Chris Salcedo Show on Facebook. Go to the search bar, type in The Chris Salcedo Show, and you'll find us. Have a great evening, everybody. Catch you next time for the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide here on the Vida Television Network.